You guys know how Skyrim is on, like, everything with a circuit board. Not just a circuit board and a screen, that's too easy, just circuit boards. Looking at you, Alexa! Play Ocean Man! Another game that had that treatment is Resident Evil 4, the pioneering third-person shooter that changed survival horror for the next decade. And probably led to the train wreck that was Resident Evil 6, but I digress. This dumb Spanish zombie shooty game has been released on the GameCube, PS2, iOS, Android, Xbox 360, PS3, PC, twice, the Wii, the Switch, and the fucking Oculus Quest 2. I'm probably missing a couple of platforms. I don't see anybody complaining or memeing about that, unlike Skyrim. I don't really have a point here besides showcasing how popular and beloved RE4 is. It's hugely influential. It basically defined third-person shooters for an entire generation of video games, and it shook up Resident Evil's formula massively. So much so that Capcom tried to recapture RE4's magic until they failed with RE6 and then went back to basics with RE7. I'm willing to bet that RE4 is a lot of people's favorite game, or at least in their top 10 or whatever. It's certainly one of my favorites. I've played through it probably a couple dozen times. The smarmy one-liners and the merchant's Cockney accent are forever seared into my neurons.
Got something that might interest you.
So, when the Resident Evil 2 remake happened, of course, I ate it up along with everyone else, and started to wonder, so they gotta do 4, right? And then the RE3 remake happened, and we all thought, okay, they definitely have to remake 4 now. And they did. And it's quite possibly the best remake of a video game that we've yet seen. We're about a year out from when RE4 Remake launched, so I thought it'd be a good time to talk about it. There isn't really much that I can say about the game that hasn't already been said. However, this is my channel, and I want to talk about one of my favorite games, so screw it. I'm just going to stick to the village section of the game, however, because I have limited time, and the process of writing this has taken too much already. Deal with it. The village is iconic. Honestly, most of RE4 is iconic. If you're like me and you've played through the original game 24 times, there are many parts that stick in your memory. The church, the lake, the water room, the regenerators. They probably live rent-free in your brain too, right? RE4 Remake does a great job of preserving the places you remember and improving upon them. A great example of this is the lake and surrounding areas leading up to El Gigante. The actual locations are relatively unchanged, but what connects them is much different. No more weird sluice gates, now you can travel across the lake in a shitty little boat like God intended. These changes keep the game feeling very familiar, but also sensical and much more organic feeling. Going back and playing the original RE4, it definitely feels like walking down a video gamey hallway. Of course, there's nearly 20 years of game design advancement between that and Remake, so that's to be expected. Despite RE4's age, which makes me feel ancient, by the way, I think it still mostly holds up. Naturally, the graphics haven't aged very well, and the way Leon moves feels quite dated, but it's still a good time. It's kind of like watching an old movie, you know? And this brings me to Remake's controls. Much like the RE2 and RE3 remakes before it, the controls are very responsive feeling. Leon feels like he has weight, it's easy to understand. The word natural comes to mind when I think about the controls. Nothing feels super weird, at least on mouse and keyboard. Side note, I did get a chance to play a little bit of RE4 Remake on a controller, PS5 controller specifically, and I was expecting it to be like the original game, and I just absolutely fucked it up so incredibly bad. It's impressive. I don't know. I like mouse and keyboard better, okay? And then there's the new mechanics, knife parrying and durability being the biggest one. It was already a pretty solid combat flow, shoot, stun, melee, repeat, now has an additional component. Having a way to defend yourself from deadly attacks is quite handy and a big quality of life improvement. However, sometimes you still get caught in a fucking bear trap. Oh, and lasers are mostly gone now too. Honestly, I don't think it's a huge change, but it does bring the shooting mechanic in line with how other modern games handle it. And I suspect that's to keep it familiar to a modern audience. The only really bad thing I can say about this is that it completely ruins the hand cannon. It's so inaccurate, it's not even worth using now. Finally, let's talk about characters. Everyone is much more realistic in terms of speech and how they react to things. Leon isn't just a dumb himbo spouting one-liners constantly.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
Louis still has the same personality for the most part, but now he's not completely one-dimensional. Ada retains her femme fatale qualities. I think she's probably changed the least out of all the protagonist characters. As for who's changed the most, Ashley is finally a real human being.
My name's Leon. I'm here in the president's orders and... that went well.
Thank God she actually acts like a scared college student who just got kidnapped and spirited away to Spain by a murder cult. 2005 Ashley was irritating at best.
I'm under the president's order to rescue you.
What? My father?
That's right.
Remake Ashley doesn't annoy me in the slightest. I'm very pleased with how she's written now. And I guess I can mention villains real quick. They really have not changed all that much, fundamentally speaking. You don't see much of them in the village portion. You do see Mendez and Sadler. There's a little bit more backstory for Mendez. But overall, both of them are fairly shallow, just kind of like boogeymen. It's not really a big deal. I'm not asking for, you know, the big bad guy of the game to have deep motivations and nuanced character arcs. It's an action game where you're shooting totally non-zombies. So overall, I'm not too bothered by villains still being relatively shallow. Oh, and of course, we also have to talk about everyone's favorite boy, the merchant.
Over here, stranger.
He's just very unchanged. He says more now. He has more voice lines. And that's all we needed. 10 out of 10, perfect character, would absolutely let him smuggle weird shit into my country. He's such a meme. He's iconic. Everyone knows the merchant. I love the merchant. We all do. Now what are you buying?
Hello, stranger. Welcome.
There is a lot more I could say about RE4 Remake, but again, it's probably been said by smarter people before, and if you're watching this, chances are you already love the game. If you haven't played RE4 at all, well, what are you doing still watching this? Why are you still here? If this game seems like your jam, I bet you're gonna have a good time playing it. RE4 Remake is easily in my top 5 games of 2023. Hell, I'd put it in my personal best games of all time. You know, I'm just like shooting from the hip here for a minute. This isn't anything that I've written. I feel like Resident Evil 4, both games, really, they speak for themselves. I don't need to tell you that the 2005 original Resident Evil 4 is one of the most influential games of all time. And I don't need to tell you that the remake is one of the best examples of what a remake should be, and is in itself a fantastic video game that innovates on what was already established and executes its game mechanics and vision extremely well. Like, I don't need to say that. I want to say that because I like talking about things that I love. So y'all go play Resident Evil 4. I don't care which one. They're both excellent. At least once in your life, experience what Resident Evil 4 has to offer. It's like going back and playing Ocarina of Time or Super Mario Brothers or something else hugely influential like that. Consider it a part of your gamer education. Well, if you've made it to the end, thank you for watching. I really do appreciate it. I look forward to reading comments, even if some of them aren't entirely positive, because that means you still listen to me and I get the engagement out of it. Okay, thanks, bye.